Do you think it can be said of Bush in his favor that he is at least a consensus politician? I mean, Reagan was something of an ideologue, but Bush won't go to the bathroom unless the polls tell him it would be a popular move. Do you think that's a sort of dilution of leadership, and perhaps that's not such a bad thing?
Well, I wouldn't agree that Reagan was an ideologue. I'd say that Reagan was a wonderful B-movie actor who read the lines that other people gave him. Let's say that we can agree in substance because ideologues ran Reagan, and Bush is more his own canny man.
When you ran for mayor of New York, when was it, 22 or 3 years ago?
69.
69. Your platform then included such things as solving disputes through gladiatorial contests.
Yeah, well, that's the one that's remembered. Actually,
well,
it was the 30th on the list.
Where did this come in the list, that people who were in cancer research should be executed gladiatorially if they made no progress after 2 years?
Yeah, well, they would also have the option of resigning.
I see.
They could resign before it came to that. No, I just felt that there's a tendency for serious activities to be overtaken by bureaucracies. And then these bureaucracies proliferate, and then they don't really move forward. They just obtain more funds, and they grow out horizontally, but they never make a true assault on the problem. So I thought if people are engaged in serious activities, they should be willing to pay a huge price if they fail. Then you obviously would get all the people who are merely looking for a bit of power without true responsibility would get out of it.
You'd presumably be horrified to take up the job right now.
Well, of mayor?
Yes.
Well, I think it's hopeless. You know, I don't know anyone who could solve New York's problems right now. I will say what we have in David Dinkins is a man with lovely manners, and New York can use a little of that. I don't think he's going to have much effect because the problems are too numerous. But he may be, in a small way, he may be a leavening agent.
Harlot's Ghost ends with the assassination of Kennedy. How do you feel, what's your view now about the Kennedy clan and Edward Kennedy?
Well, it's part of the American tragedy. You know, we really needed Teddy Kennedy. He was the only political leader in the Democratic Party who had true popular appeal and charisma, and of course his career looks to be pretty much shattered now. And that's another loss for the Democratic Party. I don't see the new people coming up who are going to be any good.
Is the Camelot idea still real for you? Do you feel that?
Well, it's real as something that happened at that time. And I think at the time it was terrific. It was what we needed. We needed a president who was interested in women, who was interested in mischief, who was young, who had an idea that the world could be changed. I mean, Eisenhower, looking back on it, was not the world's worst president, but Kennedy did bring a new spirit into America. If it hadn't been for Vietnam, that spirit might have gone somewhere. Vietnam is what buggered the whole American works.
Yeah, well, as you say in your novel, Why Are We in Vietnam, and in your journalism, do you think, it's often seemed to me that Vietnam also destroyed, in a way, the American mainstream of the novel. It was all very clear. It was progressing very orderly, the American novel. After Vietnam, writers like, say, Robert Stone and Don DeLillo became marginal figures. The novelist was no longer in the center of the culture. He was covered in beads and had long hair and came from the edges.
Oh, you mean the novelists went into the counterculture, and
yeah.
And the ones who remained on the other side were not that interesting, so it was a split.
Yes, the mainstream was fractured by it.
I wouldn't argue with that. I think another thing happened also that's hurt the novel terribly in America. It's something we were talking about just a little earlier, which is that the emphasis in America now is much more, as a capitalist country, is much more on marketing than on the care of which products are produced. So as a form of that, in publishing is a small reflection of that, places this absolute emphasis upon marketing their books. And so serious writers just get caught in the middle, even if they're reasonably well established. And there's no room left to develop writers. What happens to the good young novelists now, I don't begin to know, because they either don't get published or they get published in a token printing, and they don't develop. The chances of them having a little success en route, which warms them and strengthens them, doesn't occur. So that's had an awful lot to do with it, too. That hurt the American novel, I think, even more than the war in Vietnam.
And the whole idea of a corporate America.
Yes, well, you know, corporate America really plays as much with the American mind as the Communist Party ever did with the Soviets, with the Russian people and the other Soviet countries, because of the fact that they, at least, the Communist Party was so clumsy and forthright, that people could see it there, they could react against it, they could finally decide they had nothing to do with it. They could live a private life. And Russians, in fact, when I encountered them visiting the Soviet Union, were astonishingly individual, each one of them, much more than Americans tend to be, because the corporate life is very, very skillful at undermining one's own psyche, of getting into it, of manipulating it. And so I'd say we're more brainwashed than the Soviets ever were. You can't tell anything about America at this point. If there's a terrible depression, which I must say I fear, then there are going to be all sorts of wars in the country, because there's going to be a huge movement toward not fascism, but a sort of benign and then not so benign totalitarianism. That's absolutely in the works, because if there's a terrible depression, the ghettos are going to explode, probably. And if they do, that plus crime, plus the drug addiction and all that, is going to bring military law, military rule, and there'll be internment camps, and there'll be curtailment of individual liberties. But it'll all come under the head of democracy. What I'm getting at, about that time, everybody in America is going to go through the crucible.
You don't think the traditions of dissent are strong enough in America to, I mean, you've described yourself as an American dissident. The channels of protest are healthy, they exist.
They exist, but they are limited. You know, you can always write an article for The Nation, and The Nation reaches the people it reaches, but it does not go beyond those people. It can't.
That's 200,000 people. Yes, 200,000 people as opposed to the opposition, which is syndicated throughout America.
Yeah. In the Soviet Union, in the worst days, they had samizdat. People would write things, they'd be mimeographed, and they'd read them. And they'd read them with unholy intensity. It would change their lives. Most American writers have lost the feeling that they can change anyone's life.
It's clear that you feel a kind of envy for the Soviet writer, in that what he wrote was a life and death matter.
No, I honestly don't feel envy for them, because I think they had a bitch of a life. I respect the fact that there was that intensity attached to the writing. I never said to myself, oh, gee, I wish I were over there suffering in the Soviet Union. No, no, no. No, in that sense, I won't complain. I've had a relatively easy life compared to those guys.
We've talked about role-playing, and you've always been interested in role-playing as a politician, as an actor, as a film director. Now it seems you're playing the role of a novelist at last, and really settling down to it.
Well,
Method acting.
I'd say that's the one time I don't have a role. That's when one grows up with many identities if you have a certain kind of life. But the only one that I can begin to think of as the center for all the others is being the novelist. No, I'm a novelist if I'm anything at all.
And how do you think, you've always been the American novelist that it's impossible to pigeonhole, and I suspect you should enjoy that, and I think you do.
Yeah.
How would you like, when they write the history of 20th century American novel, where would you like to be placed? Or is that too obvious a question?
In the forefront, yes. No, you know, at this point, I can't believe it, but I've gotten to the point where I just hope one of us prevails, at least. You know, if 50 years from now I'm gone and people say John Updike was a great writer and they turn to him, then at least literature will remain. My fear is that we'll all be gone, and that people will study us the way they'll study certain obscure Elizabethan poets, and we'll have about that much effect on the general run of things.
Norman Mailer, thank you very much.
Thank you.